Hi guys, so today we're talking about f80 brakes on e46 M3, rear f80 brakes on e46 M3. A few people have done it. There is a number of different ways of doing it. A lot of them involve big complicated brackets and machining the calipers and things like that. But I've put together a little kit that sort of has a different method of solving the problem, and let me tell you all about it. So, the kit consists of some custom Hell Performance brake lines, eccentric bushings, caliper inserts, new bolts to bolt the calipers down, disc spacers or rotor spacers if you like, spigot rings for the rotors or discs, and you have some hardware, slightly longer hardware, to fasten the discs onto the hub. So through there. This here is an e46 M3 rear hub, or actually a trailing arm assembly. It's got a little M badge there. It's nice and rusty, but for our illustration it's perfect. You need to modify the backing plate, so you'd need to cut the edge off of it just to make sure that you're able to fit the much larger f80 disc onto it and it doesn't actually touch the backing plate. So leave quite a lot of the backing plate if you're planning to use a handbrake on the car, just so the handbrake's got somewhere to attach, and this backing plate is protecting the handbrake cavity so nothing gets into it, but you can cut the rest of it off just to make sure that it doesn't actually touch the disc. So as you probably guessed, disc spacers are used to space the disc out. So when the caliper is bolted down, we actually need to bring the disc outwards. And in order to do that, we need to install the spacer onto the hub. But when we do that, what you should notice is that the spigot for the disc is actually bigger than the spigot for the wheel. So when you're putting these spacers on, you're losing the spigot for the disc. This is why you need these disc spigot rings, which go on there. So the disc spacers have got a chamfer here, which is the same as the chamfer on the inner face of the discs, the same as on the e46 M3, it's the same on the f8x cars. So this chamfer here should go onto here because there isn't a straight edge, so you have to make sure that there's enough space where the chamfer is for the spacer to sit flush on the hub. So it doesn't have a chamfer on this side, not as big. Has one on that side, quite a substantial one, so it goes this way, and then you line it up so all the holes match, and then you install the spigot ring. Now the spigot ring is very much the same in terms of it has a chamfer to make it easier to install it, because you can just about see the little tiny step there that the chamfer of the spigot ring needs to sit on. So if you look at this side, there isn't a chamfer, and if we look at this side, you can just about see a tiny little chamfer. So that chamfer goes on like that way. So you tap it on. I usually use a little punch like this, and I just tap it on gently once I've cleaned the hub, and it slides all the way on. So that's the spacer fitted, that's the spigot ring fitted, and now we can install the disc. And this is what it looks like, fitted and spaced. So you can see the spacer just in there, and you can see the spigot ring just there, centering the disc now on the wheel spigot rather than on the disc spigot. So it's nice and center. Now the only thing to mention is that by spacing the disc out by 7mm, you are losing 7mm worth of spigot. So it depends which wheels you're using. What you might need to do is to use a hub-centric wheel spacer like this, and you may need to get rid of this chamfer. So you might have to machine this chamfer off just so the spacer can sit on this spigot without any issues. You don't have to. You can try it with your wheels. If your wheels have got a very little chamfer, and you are still able to center them on the wheel spigot, fantastic. But if you're having issues and your wheels have got quite a large chamfer here, and when you put them on there's still a bit of play and movement, I recommend starting with something like a 12mm spacer and just machining between 5 and 7mm off of the back face without putting a chamfer on, just so he's got a straight edge here, so you can have as much spigot engagement as you possibly can between the hub spigot and the spacer, and then between the spacer and the wheel. But again, it's not necessary. I don't include these in my kits, so it's entirely down to your actual wheels that you're going to be using on the car. And yes, by 7mm spacing behind the disc, you are gaining 7mm on each side, so it's essentially the same as using 7mm spacers on each side. So you will need 7mm longer bolts if you're using bolts, or if you're using studs, you should be fine. But bear that in mind. So your track will increase on the rear by 14mm, and you will need longer hardware if you are using bolts after using this kit. And finally, onto the calipers. So standard f80 calipers, 44mm piston version with the caliper bushings already replaced. These are the eccentric caliper bushes which come with the kit, M10 bolt holes. If you want to know how to install these, check out my other video, it should be on the channel, and you can just go ahead and bolt these down. Let me show you how. There you go. This is what it looks like, all buttoned up and fastened. So, spacer at the back there, disc, caliper. As you can see, the pad fits perfectly at the top and at the bottom. The caliper fits perfectly. It's bolted down from this side with the new bolts, and that also fits perfectly. Just make sure the backing plate is not touching anything, and spin the disc when you install everything, just to make sure if you need to bend the backing plate ever so slightly, because the attachment points are thicker on the new calipers, so they could be interfering with the back plate, and you might need to manipulate it a little bit just to make sure that it's not catching on the disc. But this is what it looks like. So that's it. Hope you liked the video. Hope this answers some of your questions, and as always, I'll see you again in the next video. Take care, all the best.